Senator Mark Kelly just can't stop undermining the military he claims to defend. Karen Bass ducking future debates as Spencer Pratt mops the floor with her in L.A. And the Obama Library is about to open, finally, hundreds of millions of dollars later, a shrine to corruption and anti-Americanism. It's Tuesday, May 12th, 2026, and this is news and commentary with common sense delivered from America's Heartland. This is Heartlander News. Welcome into Heartlander News. I'm Chris Stigall. I don't know if you happen to catch John Brennan, the former CIA director for Barack Obama, recently saying the quiet part out loud about weaponized government partisans, even today, still amongst the Trump administration. Take a listen.
He has succeeded largely in turning DOJ and the FBI into political arms of his political operation. What still exists in the system to slow that down?
Well, I think, as Liz mentioned, there's still a legion of professionals in the law enforcement environment, the Department of Justice, as well as the CIA and other places, the ones who are refusing to follow politically motivated prosecutions, those who are refusing to support any type of political activities on the part of the Trump administration that are inconsistent with the authorities, the responsibilities of the intelligence community, law enforcement community, and Department of Justice.
He has succeeded largely.
Yeah. Interesting choice of words, legion. What he's admitting is, of course, what most of us understand and know, and that is that inside government still, sadly, particularly in intelligence, there are still many, many, many hyper-partisans, probably communicating at the regular with guys like John Brennan. This is the government that Barack Obama has designed. And this past weekend, I don't know if you caught that Barack Obama flew to Toronto to headline a big elitist gala for Canada 2020. He shared the stage with the profoundly anti-Trump prime minister and the same people who funnel a bunch of money into anti-American causes. It's more than just a bad look for the former president, not that he cares. It's the global left plotting their next efforts to defeat transparency in government and elections, just as John Brennan said. There are people committed to this. Barack Obama was the keynote speaker at this 20th anniversary gala. His politics and his host, Canada 2020, they're in alignment, and everybody should take note. Start with gender insanity, for instance. This organization called Canada 2020 pushes biological males into women's sports, into women's prisons, and women's bathrooms. They cheer puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones for kids. Sounds kind of familiar, doesn't it? It's exactly what Barack Hussein Obama did. He opened the military to trans troops, forced schools to affirm gender confusion over common sense and parental rights. And of course, it's not science, as we all understand. It's not compassionate in the least. It's an ideology that wipes out women's rights and leaves broken, mutilated, traumatized kids in its wake. Biology, of course, is not bigotry, and pretending otherwise doesn't make you kind. It makes you a monster. Then there's radical Islam. Same deal. They scream Islamophobia while refusing to say the words radical Islamic terrorism. After 9/11, for instance, after the Pulse nightclub shooting, after too many attacks to count, they protect the victimizers, not the victims. And in case anyone doesn't know by now, Islamists treat women as third-class humans, and gays and trans people, well, cannon fodder, to put it mildly. Obama banned the term Islamic extremism and Islamic terrorism from the government lexicon. Canada 2020 sings from that exact same hymnal. It's no secret that that very mindset doesn't prevent terrorism. It invites it. Finally, we have a president that understands that. What's the economic vision of this bunch? Punish success, grow government, spread misery, and manage the decline. They talk compassion, they talk about kindness, but they implement brutal taxes, brutal regulations. They encourage waste and fraud and corruption. Your taxes, they treat as their personal piggy bank. Barack Obama's legacy was record regulations, exploding debt, stagnant wages, and worst of all, I think, division in this country like we've never seen before. The man, he despises Donald Trump, cut taxes, has been drilling for American energy, and gave all Americans the strongest economy in decades with rising wages, record low unemployment, and eliminated hundreds of billions of dollars in fraud. Now, Obama can't stand this because it proves that the entirety of his presidency was a complete and utter destructive lie. Let's be clear about what this little confab, this gala that Barack Obama was a part of last weekend, let's be clear about what it really was. Canada 2020. They've spent years calling Trump a threat to democracy, which, again, you purists understand is such a stupid thing to say anyway, as we're a representative republic. But I digress. They trash America first because, of course, it's Canada 2020. They don't like that. Nationalism has no place, apparently, unless it's soccer, I guess. These are the same global progressives who hate strong borders or strong militaries or sovereign nations. Obama didn't just wander into this situation last weekend by mistake. It's his ideological home. Obama is not pretending that he's a centrist or a unifier anymore, by the way. Remember when he ran, it was no blue states, no red states, just the United States. That's gone. His inner circle and former administration are now under DOJ and FBI scrutiny for election interference, actively undermining a man who, at different times, was a president-elect, a leading Republican candidate, and so on. John Brennan, as you just heard, admitted as much. It's still going on. They can't stand it. And their masks are off. Obama and his henchmen, they finally pivoted to aligning openly with the most radical elements of the socialist and communist left. Look, we've always known who he was, but now he's been outed, forced to drop the moderate act and seek shelter among his fellow travelers, the most radical in his midst. This is the network Obama has always belonged to, the Jeremiah Wright and Bill Ayers wing of the Democrat Party. I remember way back when talking about Reverend Jeremiah Wright and his sermons, America's Chickens Coming Home to Roost after 9/11. That was Barack Obama's preacher. And people swooned in the street to elect Barack Obama anyway, believing the speechifying of Obama, but it was never true. Barack Obama was always Jeremiah Wright. He was always that radical left-winger. And by the way, did you know that his little library, which is just about to open finally, did you know that Obama is actually selling Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals in his presidential library? That's true. Look it up. And be sure to pick up, I guess, a copy of it in the gift shop for your favorite America-hating radical when it opens soon. In fact, this from Fox News about that opening. Valerie Jarrett has earned $740,000 as Barack Obama and his insiders filled top roles during this presidential center build. This thing, all told, they said, this monstrosity, and if you've seen it, it's ugly as sin, $850 million was the final price tag on it. As construction nears completion on the long-delayed $850 million presidential center, tax filings show that the CEO of the place, and again, probably one of the great architectural radicals of the Obama administration, Valerie Jarrett, was paid $740,000 in just 2024 alone, and several former White House officials under Obama collected six-figure salaries as foundation executives. Now, just imagine, I don't know whose dollars went to this thing, but 19.3-acre center on publicly owned Chicago parkland paid their CEO more than any other major presidential foundation. Salaries and benefits. You ready for this? For the Obama Library, not even open yet. Taken years, $850 million to open. The total on salaries and benefits soared from $18.5 million in 2018 to $43.7 million in 2024. Staffing expanded from 337 employees, that is to 337 employees, and annual revenue reached nearly 210 million. That is astounding. And a perfect representation, and it only makes sense that this would be the monument to Barack Obama. Explosive spending, unregulated spending, bloated salaries for top executives, top down. This is a Barack Obama legacy now memorialized in the payroll of the Barack Obama Library. It's fitting, actually. Jarrett, one of Obama's closest advisors, took over as CEO in 2021 and is among 6 of the foundation's 10 highest paid executives. So she's been there roughly 5-6 years now, collecting somewhere around $750,000 a year just on that. And that's just sitting on a board, folks. That's not even the speeches and the books and the like. Wow, unbelievable. Meanwhile, what are they giving Trump hell about now? Well, there's a nonprofit that is actually suing the president at present for trying to resurface the National Mall pool in advance of America's 250th anniversary. Not making it up. A Washington area education and advocacy nonprofit on Tuesday sued the Interior Department and the National Park Service over President Trump's resurfacing of the bottom of the reflecting pool on the National Mall in D.C. Now, here's a guy that is investing in something that all of us can use, all of us can share, all of us can be prideful of, and that is America's monuments when you go visit America's capital. The Cultural Landscape Foundation and Charles Birnbaum, the organization's CEO, filed the lawsuit arguing that the president failed to follow congressional mandated procedures for such a project. They're also after him continually about this ballroom, which every president has wanted and needed. You know, it's interesting. You go to the Truman Presidential Library in Independence, Missouri right now, and you will see a huge display of President Truman's undertaking of gutting the entirety of the White House, right down to the studs. You know why they call it the Truman Balcony on the White House to this day? Because he installed it at his direction. There was no such thing as the Truman Balcony before Harry Truman gutted the entirety of the White House and redesigned it. Check it out. It's worth investigating, and you'll see how stupid Trump building a ballroom, the complaints coming at him for that, how stupid they sound. Here's Schumer freaking out about it on the Senate floor, number 58.
And everything to do with Trump's ego. How long before Trump asked for his name to be emblazoned in gold on the side of the ballroom? The American people are calling out for help. But these ballroom Republicans have a constituency of one, Donald Trump's ego. That is a disgrace. Democrats will use every tool in our arsenal to fight this bill. We will bring changes. We will bring challenges under the Byrd rule. We will offer floor amendments. We will force Republicans to take vote after vote showing that instead of helping working families, Republicans are forcing Americans to pay for Trump's billionaire ballroom.
So the Democrats have finally found a pulse. They care deeply about you, and they're going to show it by arguing over a new ballroom for the White House. This is the line in the sand. This is where they're going to finally fight. Pretty infuriating. John Thune, who is the majority leader right now for the Republicans and becoming a very, very, well, I'll just say, frustrating point of contention for many Republicans who hear what guys like Chuck Schumer have pledged to do, obstruct all the way. Meanwhile, real things need to get done, like the Save America Act, and they're not happening. And, Thune goes off on the Senate floor, but he also unintentionally here makes the perfect argument for why these Democrats and this whole, at least what's called zombie filibuster, has to be nuked. I mean, look, Democrats are willing to obstruct over ridiculous things. And then when it comes time to actually put up or shut up, if they're going to filibuster the SAVE Act, that is proving who you and I are to vote, proving that you can vote legally in the country with a piece of identification. If they really want to stop that, we should make them, take to the Senate floor and do a talking filibuster. Good old-fashioned Mr. Smith goes to Washington. That's what the filibuster was actually designed to do. meaning talk till you couldn't stand up anymore. And once everybody was done talking, then you had to have a vote finally to proceed. That's an actual filibuster. And fine, if you're a purist and you say that's a great tradition of the Senate, even though it's not in the Constitution, but if you like that tradition, all right, fine, then let's re-implement that. Let's see if Democrats are really as tough as they say they are. Thune so far has not pushed that, and many Republicans want to at least nuke this notion of the zombie filibuster. That is the non-talking filibuster. So the idea that you can filibuster without actually doing the old Frank Capra, Mr. Smith goes to Washington, stand on the Senate floor and do it the right way. So there are people who would argue nuke what's called the zombie filibuster, force them to do the talking filibuster. There are others who would say, let's just do away with this whole notion of the filibuster at all. And I understand that there are a good number of you. By the way, there are Republicans, plenty of Republicans that have gone on record, even in the Senate, that would like to just do away with the filibuster. Now, what does that mean? If you do that, ultimately that means it's just going to take a simple majority in the Senate to pass everything. There will no longer be a 60-vote threshold to end debate and then move on to the final vote. The whole idea of the 60-vote threshold, as I think most of this audience understands, the Senate created this to make it, the effort was to always make it seem like, okay, you had to have some buy-in from people that weren't necessarily in charge, that if you could bring some people from the other side of the aisle in to end debate on an issue, then you could proceed. It doesn't mean you had to commit to voting with the opposite side. It just meant that you had to commit to saying, all right, we've debated this thing. And I don't hate it, by the way. I think most Americans, most fair-minded people say, all right, if the Senate says, their rule says, we have to get 60 people together in this body to acknowledge we've talked this thing to death, there's nothing more to debate, let's now take a vote. Again, it doesn't guarantee the way the vote's going to go. It's just a process that says 60 of us agree, 60 out of 100 of us at least agree it's time to advance this to a vote. We've talked it to death enough. But that filibuster was designed to keep talking and keep talking and keep talking and extend debate as long as you possibly could until you couldn't talk anymore. That was the original design of it. It's being abused now, called the zombie filibuster. Anyway, I'm explaining this maybe overly so for people who don't know the rules on this thing, but I know it drives a lot of you crazy. So here's Thune going off on Democrats on the Senate floor, and I think unintentionally making the case for why you've got to at least blow up the zombie filibuster
from our nation's borders. Mr. President, I shouldn't need to state the obvious here that we need border security and immigration enforcement officers to protect our nation, just as we need police officers and FBI agents and Secret Service agents and all of the law enforcement officers who serve our communities. Democrats might like to pretend otherwise, but there are dangerous individuals who would like to make their way illegally across our border. Drug traffickers, human traffickers, other criminals, terrorists. And the men and women of the Border Patrol and Immigration and Customs Enforcement are the men and women who stand between us and these dangerous individuals, who turn them back at our borders and take them out of our communities if they do manage to make their way into our country. These are the men and women that my Democrat colleagues want to defund. Not reform, Mr. President. No. My Democrat colleagues repeatedly rejected reforms. They want to defund. And defund completely. Zero agents at our border. Zero agents to deport criminals here in the U.S. illegally. That's what my Democrat colleagues opted for. It's Police Week this week, Mr. President. A week to honor our nation's law enforcement officers and remember those who made the...
Yeah. Look, Senator Thune, I appreciate what you just said, and thank you for defining who Democrats are, but we all knew that. So back to the argument of allowing them to obstruct common sense. Why are you doing this? Why aren't you willing to use your power to fight them harder and force them into a good old-fashioned traditional filibuster situation? If you don't want to get rid of it, which I think a lot of you in this audience are in favor of just blowing up this old tradition of filibuster, zombie or otherwise, Mike Lee makes the point in number 61 here. Senator Lee from Utah is pushing Thune hard from the Republican side, saying, okay, all right, you don't want to get rid of the filibuster. And I've heard this from traditional Republicans. They say, oh, we don't want to be the ones to get our hands dirty on this thing. And then you say to them, well, Democrats are going to do it. And they say, yeah, they will, but let them do it. We don't want to be the ones to do it. That's a very frustrating thing. And here's Mike Lee explaining why.
The time is right now for filibuster reform. We've got to either enforce the talking filibuster or nuke the zombie filibuster. Status quo is not working. And if we're going to accomplish the reform agenda that the American people sent us here to accomplish, we've got to get this done. There's a natural impulse in Washington that encourages people to hold off on doing what needs to be done until tomorrow or next year or whatever it is. But sometimes you run out of clock with that, and this is one of those moments. So if you agree with this, help amplify the message. It's time to move forward with filibuster reform right now.
Harumph. Harumph, harumph, and amen, Senator Mike Lee. I hope we've done our part to amplify that message. You can too. Let your United States Senator know you'd like to, at least at a bare minimum, if you're one of these people that says, no, we don't want to get rid of the filibuster. Okay, fine. At least get rid of the zombie filibuster. Force these people, if they mean it, to stand on the Senate floor and talk until they're hoarse or they wet themselves. Because they can't leave. That's the rule. There's no bathroom breaks or anything like that. You've got to stand there and talk until you're out-talked. Because, look, I'm all for the Senate being the great deliberative body. They're supposed to be the saucer, the House is the boiling hot beverage inside the teacup. And every 2 years, voters, the various inflamed passions of the electorate go here and go there, and the House of Representatives is supposed to reflect that. And our system of government was set up so that the Senate had 6 years over there. They're the saucer. They catch the bubbling over hot liquid, let it cool a little bit. The Senate loves, guys like Thune love to be the thoughtful, deliberative body. Oh, they love it. Okay, fine. But if you really love your tradition, again, the filibuster is not in the Constitution, but the traditional filibuster was always meant to be the Frank Capra, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington version. For you young people who haven't seen it, go check it out. But there's a very classic and famous scene where he's trying to stop something terribly corrupt, Jimmy Stewart as a senator, trying to stop something very corrupt, and he talks and talks and talks on the Senate floor until he collapses and passes out. And that's what a filibuster was always supposed to do. And again, ultimately, 60 people voting to advance to go ahead and have a final vote. It's not a guarantee that it passes in final vote. It just ends debate. When will debate end? Well, senators have created this zombie filibuster that locks them in debate, even though they're not literally debating, and nothing can proceed. Thune says he doesn't want to do anything about it. Getting harder to understand why. And glad that guys like Senator Lee of Utah and others are amplifying the problem. A lot of senators making news this week. Mark Kelly, one of the more loathsome Democrats who just cannot stop, here number in 51, you probably caught this over the weekend. Mark Kelly cannot stop talking about military readiness in public. He's getting these classified briefings, and he loves to tell everybody about problems the military's having. He loves to encourage the military to push back against leadership and just flatly refuse to follow orders. Mark Kelly is, I don't know. I think some people could probably call it treason. I mean, here's a guy that is privy to a lot of intel and highly sensitive stuff, and he keeps going on television to discuss it in the open. Listen to this.
Began by asking whether the Pentagon has provided an answer on how depleted U.S. munitions are because of the war with Iran.
Yes, Margaret, we have. We've been tracking it. A number of times we've been briefed by the Pentagon on specific munitions. Actually, it's been pretty detailed on Tomahawks, ATACMS, SM-3s, THAAD rounds, Patriot rounds, so those interceptor rounds to defend ourselves. And the numbers are, I think it's fair to say it's shocking, how deep we have gone into these magazines, because this president got our country into this without a strategic goal, without a plan, without a timeline. And because of that, we've expended a lot of munitions. And that means the American people are less safe, whether it's a conflict in the Western Pacific with China or somewhere else in the world. The munitions are depleted. You may have seen me ask the Secretary of Defense this question about how long it's going to take to replenish. We're talking about years.
Well, that's helpful. Thank you, Senator Kelly, for broadcasting to the world and our enemies that you apparently assess we're in a weakened state. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth blasting away on this. Captain Mark Kelly strikes again, he wrote on X. Now he's blabbing on TV about a classified Pentagon briefing he received, falsely and dumbly, he said. Pentagon briefings. Did he violate, says Pete Hegseth, did he violate his oath again? Pentagon legal counsel will review. Kelly claiming that it is shocking how deep we've gone into magazines, as you just heard. The senator, a retired Navy captain, former NASA astronaut, told the host that the War Department has given him and his colleagues pretty detailed briefings about stockpiles of missiles, Tomahawks and the like, that we're running out of. Kelly responding to Hegseth saying he's blabbing, writing, we had this conversation in a public hearing a week ago, and you said it would take years to replenish some of these stockpiles. That's not classified. It's a quote from you. This war is coming at a serious cost, and you and the president still haven't explained to the American people what the goal is. So that's where the Democrats are. And I think because we understand that they play for keeps and there is absolutely no limit, no low to which they won't sink, one wonders why. I continue to wonder why, as I'm sure you do. John Thune just does not seem to be made of the same stuff. Guys like Mark Kelly, guys like Chuck Schumer, they have said that they are willing to do whatever it takes to undermine and thwart President Trump, out him, undermine military efforts if they must on national television, broadcast globally. There's no end to what they won't do, even though they're not in power, to stop the agenda of the president and the Republicans in the Congress. And yet here we are with the controls as Republicans, and Thune says, well, maybe we can talk our way through it. It's really infuriating. More news out of the Senate. Josh Hawley, senator from Missouri, says he will introduce legislation to suspend the federal gas tax, which would save drivers 18.4 cents per gallon. Suspending the gas tax, this from The Hill, is quickly picking up more support among Republicans who are worried about voter backlash on the rise in oil and natural gas prices since the start of the military conflict in Iran. His office, Hawley's office, that is, notes that the Trump administration, they talked I guess they talked over the weekend about it. And Trump said, I think it's a great idea. Yep, we're going to take off the gas tax for a period of time. And then when gas goes down, we'll let it phase back in. So that's interesting, if in fact true or can be implemented. Regular gas now stands at $4.52 per gallon on average across the country. So good on Hawley there. I think most people cheer that. When that will take effect, we don't know. I'm not entirely sure what process that takes. And Lord knows, I mean, if it takes a vote, well, I'm sure it's not going to get far in the Senate, given what we're experiencing right now. It is interesting what's going on by way of oil. The United States on Monday, yesterday, imposed sanctions on 3 individuals and 9 companies, including firms based in Hong Kong, the UAE, and Oman, for helping ship Iranian oil to China. Scott Bessent, I call him Street Tough Scott Bessent, first Treasury Secretary, kind of nerdy guy. I mean, and I say that lovingly. I love Scott Bessent, but it's so funny. You know, he's he got the glasses, kind of the egghead demeanor, but like not afraid of a brawl. Have you read the stories that he's gone literally chest to chest with guys like Elon? He apparently has a fiery temper and he's not afraid to fight. I dig it. Anyway, the move by the Treasury Department follows sanctions announced Friday targeting networks involved in procuring weapons components for Iran's drone and ballistic missile programs. Treasury said the sanctions issued by its Office of Foreign Assets Control target individuals and entities that helped Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps sell and transport oil to China through front companies. Bessent said the administration would continue using sanctions to cut off funding for Iran's military, nuclear program, and regional proxy groups. Treasury will continue to cut the Iranian regime off from the financial networks they use to carry out terrorist attacks and destabilize the global economy. So they're still out there selling oil to China through front groups, and Trump, it's a bit of whack-a-mole here. Also interesting, the UAE, the United Arab Emirates, has been carrying out secret attacks on Iran. I think that when we're talking about this situation, in the Middle East, specific to Iran, the biggest news to come of this whole thing, despite the fact that the Trump administration has decimated much of Iran's capabilities, the big news in all of it, in my opinion, is that Iran's neighbors have joined this. This has never happened before, and I do think that's glossed over a lot. I don't think the media wants to talk about it at all. I think Trump's enemies certainly don't want to highlight this fact, but this is a big, as Biden used to say, big effing deal. The United Arab Emirates has carried out military strikes on Iran, people familiar with the matter said, casting the Gulf monarchy as an active combatant in a war in which it had been Iran's biggest target. Its military is well equipped with Western-made jet fighters and surveillance networks, and the attacks suggest the country is now more willing to use them to protect their economic power and growing influence across the Middle East. I still maintain that what we're seeing from the Trump administration in terms of the strategy in Iran is more of this engagement from their neighbors, breaking up and breaking away from OPEC, making these people more independent, doing business with them directly instead of as a confab, encouraging Iran's moderate neighbors to tackle these goons themselves. I think Trump is stirring up the proverbial hornet's nest for Iran. He's empowering and emboldening Iran's neighbors to take action. Most moderate Muslim nations there do not support Iran. They don't want to live next to Iran, behaving the way Iran does. Remember the Abraham Accords. Trump was getting very, very close to normalizing trade relations between Saudi Arabia and Israel, for instance. And that was something Iran did not want. And many people believe the October 7th attacks in Israel from the Palestinians, that was why. As a proxy of Iran, they were getting very, very close to normalizing trade. And so Iran said, we can't have this. Iran has been a destabilizing force in that region for a very long time. Trump is encouraging their common enemies to get involved here, and the UAE is stepping up. That's, I think, a very significant bit of news. Meanwhile, President Trump yesterday on that front stated that the ceasefire with Iran was on life support amid a growing diplomatic deadline between Tehran and Washington and the exchange of live rounds across the Persian Gulf. It's unbelievably weak, writes Ben Whedon at Just the News, after reading that garbage they sent over. I didn't even waste my time reading all of it. It's on life support, Trump told reporters. I would say that the ceasefire is on massive life support, where the doctor walks in and says, "Sir, your loved one has approximately 1% chance of living." So not optimistic. What that means next, we don't know. But of course, we'll continue to follow it here.